Shalom Aleichem. Good evening and welcome to California State University Stanislaus on this August 7th, 2019. My name is Carmen Morad, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for attending. As we remember the Assyrian martyrs, we honor the fallen, empower the future, and promise never to forget. We stand in solidarity with our Armenian and Greek brothers and sisters. We stand in solidarity with our friends and neighbors of the Sikh community, the Yazidi community, the Hmong community, and all of those who have suffered atrocities and genocide. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Ellen Jun, President of CSU Stanislaus, for her leadership and vision to create an environment of diversity and inclusion for all on campus against hate. Thank you, Dr. Jun. I would like to invite Dr. Kimberly Greer as Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs to please come up for greetings. She started her appointment in 2017 and has demonstrated a commitment to assure access to success of faculty and staff. Please help me welcome Dr. Greer.
Good evening and welcome to our beautiful campus. On behalf of Stan State, faculty, staff, students, and administration, I want to tell you how excited and proud we are to join with the Assyrian American Civics Club of Turlock to host the third annual Assyrian Genocide Remembrance. I see that we have a lot of special guests, colleagues, and friends here tonight who I know will be introduced in a few minutes. And I know she's already been mentioned, but I would like to recognize our president of Stan State, Dr. Ellen Jun. Do you want to wave, Stan? Thank you. It's as important today as ever before that we remember the events around World War I that killed and displaced so many people in the Assyrian, Armenian, and Greek communities. The lessons we should have learned from these events nearly 100 years ago remain very important today across the world, and particularly in America, where divisiveness seems to be as rampant as is any time in our own history. All of us at Stan State strive to make our campus as welcoming and as inclusive as possible, so events such as this are incredibly integral to part of our college experience. By recognizing the atrocities committed not that many years ago, we are reminded of what can happen in times of great division, with the hope that all of us can learn from the mistakes of the past. Again, it's my honor to welcome you to Stan State. Please enjoy the rest of the evening, and thank you for being here.
I would like now to ask Reverend Edward William Isabek to please come up to lead us in prayer.
Shalom Aleichem. Greetings. It is an honor to be here on this Assyrian National Day of Martyrs. These days, martyrs, we don't hear these names anymore, this word, and we hear more victims. I believe a nation that feels they are victims, they raise victims' children. But those who believe that martyrs are heroes of a nation, will raise heroes. Today we are here not to observe and consider and celebrate a victimized nation, but a nation with many fallen heroes and those who are still alive. Lord Almighty, so great is our love for you, even though we walk in a world where speaking your name can mean certain death. We pray for those endured exile from their country and their families, for love of God and the faith. Help all who live in exile today, and help us to value our faith above our securities. We praise you for those who had courage to witness for Christ before men, governments, and ideologies without counting the cost. Help us to have the same courage in our day. We praise you, Lord, for our martyrs, for their love toward the cross, the church, and the Assyrian nation, and that they suffered exile, persecution, and death to proclaim Jesus Christ among Assyrians and their neighbors. Bless our nation, and for all who are called to proclaim Christ today, here and now. We remember our martyrs for their profound love for truth, that they did not deny it even though it meant suffering and death. Give us, Lord, the same love of truth and zeal for the faith they had. We come to you, Lord, to preserve a witness to the end and joyfully accept the suffering that we may have, grace of final perseverance as well. Help us, Lord, work for a world where all may speak their creeds and pray their prayers without fear of violence. Hear the prayers of those who abide with you in dangerous times and in dark valleys, and who die with your name on their lips. Draw them quickly to your side, where they might know eternal peace. I believe all Assyrian Christian martyrs, before they died, they had God's name on their lips. And they did it in Assyrian, sweet Assyrian language. With all respect, I would love to pray in Assyrian, in remembrance of all Assyrian martyrs. Let us pray. Salasut. Allah babat lantianta de minta u shakarta dat ivet Allah has sarast Allah had qad urkhit sahduta qadian mughziyut Allah had qad marani shumshikha sahda qadisha awi latusa qadian shakiru khakhya maria qad idium gudaha ramsha khuba umtanaya himanu tamshikhata la muidal qarabaya ala ida guida بنطارو هيايوتات أها أمتا صالو الصوت يامر يلاخ جي قدانيت قد تشئيتنا إلا قدانيت قد إديوم تشئيتا بكتابنا يو سوريا يو أردن يو عراق يو يوروب بربزة إديوم بتخاطرت هيمانو تمشيخت ديه أطري شولاني كلبتي شويقينا لبخاداتت إديوم صالو يامر يقى السهد خاية صالح سوتا دا أما كنش بريخة لخا قدارمش صالح وخ يا مريم يبت شباقت يبت لبة يبت سمتا وهيلينج الكل دربات خيرطلن لعب ماريروتا جشتخ التشئيتا لعب كربة لعب كين لعب الريشتا بقيرت وبخا هيمانوتا قد جاشوتلا الديانتا أبدينات ديخ أنا كل صاليرة قوش مبريخة باروقان ماراني شمشيخة شامطلان بابا برونا روخة خدشات لتايوتا قدشتا آمين. Thank you.
Reverend Edward Isabek of the St. John Assyrian Presbyterian Church. I would like to ask our Chief of Police, Nino Amirfar, and Mr. John Bid Babanta to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
If you could please stand.
Please join me in the salute to our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Please stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to the Assyrian flag. Salmat Shubahan, Surtat Slawatan, Rushmat Dayutan, Ati Wat Mugabti, Atan Habibta, Bimromet Khiruta, Bimayu and Baruya Khananatawa, Minkule Gani, Minkule Ruhi, Matfach Kadishta, Dohan Kul Itli, Mat Iwan Khaya, Captain Lashlaya, Peshat Murimta, Peshat Budishta, Khutlani Tabrukta, Alam Shubukta, Mechkan Rohani, Mechkan Niachani, Atat Benahran, Atur Kadishta.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to commemorate August 7th, Assyrian Genocide Memorial Day. Many Americans are already familiar with the horrors of the Armenian genocide, but not nearly as many know about the genocide of innocent Assyrian civilians by the Ottoman Empire, which is walking a resolution to finally recognize the genocide of Assyrians in the Middle East. Many of my Assyrian friends and neighbors in California's Central Valley still carry the weight of this horrific event. Beginning in 1914, the Ottoman Empire is estimated to have slaughtered 300,000 innocent Assyrians. But some experts believe the true death toll is much higher. On August 7th, Shav B'Tabak, we remember those who were lost, and we say never again. My resolution would take simple steps to do both. It would assert that Turkey, the inheritor of the Ottoman tradition, must recognize the genocide, and it would condemn any efforts to associate the U.S. with genocide denial. My resolution would recognize the resilience of the Assyrian people who endured the genocide, the Samela massacre, and are now threatened once again by holdouts and ISIS. And they've survived all of this without a homeland to call their own. Today we remember the Sada, the martyrs. We think of their families. And we recommit ourselves to upholding the rights of all people to live freely and in safety. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege and an honor for me to introduce the chair of the Assyrian Caucus in the House of Representatives of the United States of America, Congressman Josh Harder.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Thank you, President John and Stanislaus State, for hosting this wonderful event. Many of you know the heart that I have for our community of Assyrians here in Turlock. Many of you know that I was partially raised by Nanabit Para right here. When I think about the Assyrian community through the last several millennia of its history, I see the strength and the resilience of a people that, despite terrible persecution, have continued to build a wonderful culture and community that we share here today. But I actually think that today, on Shav B'Tabak, it is actually so exciting to see not just our Assyrian community here, but our Sikh community, our Asian American community, Latino community, the full breadth of the diversity of the Central Valley. Because today is not just a day to recognize the Sada, the martyrs. Today is also a day for education. It is a day to make sure that every person in our community, in our country, and in our world recognizes what is actually taking place. The only way that we can be truly saying never again is if we come and recognize the enormity of what happened, starting in 1914, the fact that 300,000 Assyrians and more were murdered by the Ottoman Empire. And so that's why I've introduced this resolution, which you heard of. What this is going to do, it is going to demand that Turkey finally recognizes the genocide, finally recognizes the importance of bringing out Assyrian victims out of the shadows, keeping the language and the culture of the Assyrian people alive, and making sure also that we don't just stop in 1914, but that we realize the persecution that our community is going under even now. If you go to the site of the Samela massacre in modern-day Iraq, that site is still not protected to this day. That is the work that we have to ongoing. It's not just remembering what has happened in the past, it is doing better with the work we have to do today. I am so excited to see so many wonderful folks from the full diversity of our community coming out to talk about this important event. I am proud to be the chair of the Assyrian Caucus in Congress and to work every single day to make sure that those words never forget become reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. I would like to invite all the leadership of the Assyrian churches and the leadership of Assyrian organizations that are present here to please come up on stage and share this resolution as a unified Assyrian community. بسمالخون كهنة عمرانا دبرانت شتابوياتن بسمالخون بغديتون لخا. I would like to ask each member or each member of our clergy, please introduce themselves and their congregation, and then we'll move on to the presidents of our social and political organizations.
قشاد منيفين من أمرة إيفانجيلايد أوتران بيت تورلاك.
قشای لیشاغاس رایت ایتاد هی ببرخت پاترایب تورلاک.
شلام عليكم مغبي أنا بنول شلنا ب مشتغلان دبيتشيلت إيتا مخويت إيفانجيلايد أوتراي تورلاك.
أنا كاسا جوزيف كاسا تري مريات أتوراي كالداي كاثوليكاي تورلوك وأتوراي كالداي كاثوليك مارمتاي سيليس.
قشا Edward Isabek, Right Umrud Mario Hanam Presbyterian Authorized Turlock, St. John Assyrian Presbyterian Church, Evangelical Presbyterian Church denomination.
شلام الأخن أنا يون قاشو ديشو بهادو يون قاشا أتمرعيت أتمطمريم إيتا أتقتت مدنخا
رمشو خبريخا أنا قاشا تشارلز بارناباس قاشا إيتا United Assyrian Evangelical Church in Turlock. مريا بار
قاشا سيونيفين البت شليمون بيت سرجس كتاني لي بينا بوزدا سيون كياطي لي قاشت إيتاد كنوشد على هذا تراي تورلاك قد إلى إيتاد Assembly of God Church in Turlock.
Shalom Aleichem. I'm the president of the Assyrian American National Federation. Thank you. Martin Umaran, thanks.
Shalom Aleichem Kilochun. هاي ترى باسم قد بغدتون أنا even Sam David تبرانت شو تابوت dot right Turlock.
Good evening. Shalom Aleichem. Fred Isaac, Mishalan Zo Adam Qarataya Aturaya, Port California.
Good evening. Shalom Maryam Mochon Neumti Aturaya, Edmond Yosef, Tekbran Tokast Marzaya, Modesto.
Good evening. My name is Antoine Verani. I'm the current president for Assyrian Aid Society Central Valley Chapter and the president-elect for Assyrian Aid Society of America. Thank you.
Shalom Aleichem. My name is Anthony Narsi, president of CSU, Central California Assyrian Student and Youth Association. Thank you.
Shalom Aleichem. My name is Nora Betusef Lacey. I'm the founder of Assyrian Art Institute.
I would like to ask Congressman Josh Harder to join us one more time, just to let everyone know that this resolution is for an entire Assyrian community here, and how we appreciate the fact that he has presented this resolution, not just for us living in this county, but the Assyrian nation, because he is our voice in Congress.
Thank you, Carmen. This has been a long, long battle and plight. The Assyrian nation has been waiting for over 100 years to be recognized for the massacre that happened in the years 1914 through 1918. It's with great pleasure and great honor for me to stand beside a friend to this community, Congressman Josh Harder, and this wonderful resolution that we finally get the recognition that our community desperately deserved. All of our churches, all of our organizations, all the members of this community, this belongs to you. It does not belong to anybody but you. So again, I'd like to have Josh Harder come up. I will be speaking in Assyrian for those that are here that don't understand English, but وين ما دنا خو قد ختيان تمن تجور تتلي من دادران قل خوري اللي قد أودي يوما بر ما شنة أو بيرمت قد قديان بيدونا وقطت بيدونا بيد تركيا بيد Ottoman Empire عادية رشمايين مش المدية قادونية بخا برسوبة بخا أترى بريشة شوك منا خاطر جبار دادونية أودي يوما بهيرت جاش هاردر مدوينا قد هي عمدي بيلي وكما أنا نقيتها لكلا بدامدي رابها بخديودي من بس معلوخن خاتشاب خيلان تقال كامل.
Thank you, Basim Raba. I would like to ask all of you to have a seat so we can continue with our program. Ms. Eglantine Warda, I would like to ask her to come up and Svini Bitsergis. Ms. Eglantine Warda is a soprano vocalist. Please come up. She started singing at the age of 7. She was born in Baghdad, Iraq. Her late mother, Anna, planted the seed and joy of singing and music in her at an early age. Through the decades, she has been performing and enlightening all of us with her magical voice and to celebrate her heritage and culture. We are delighted to have her perform a song that she sang this year at the Assyrian New Year's celebration in Nuhadra, Duhok, Iraq, Bid Nahrain, for an audience of 10,000. This song is called Ya Nishrit Khume by Freydun Aturaya.
مقد شعر وينتنين نور الميت جلا ونياخة سهلا جبارا زمرت ديان شرط خومة آخريتا بدمخي ديانو خزيتون جو يوث ديان يجرن خماتا متالنتن
Thank you, Eglantine, for that beautiful performance. Before we move to our first speaker, I would like to recognize some of our friends of the Assyrian community who have honored us by their presence. From the Armenian community, I'd like to welcome Dr. Vahag Arslanian. Can you please stand or let us know where you are, please? Thank you. Randy Bolodian. And I will read the following. Mr. Surjit Malhi from the Sikh community. They are so kind. Harbhajan Bahinder from the Latino community, our friend of the Assyrian community, Mr. Dale Butler. You already met our congressman. Mr. Cooper Condit from the California State Legislature, Assemblyman Heath Flores' office. Thank you for always being here. Supervisor Vito Chiesa, Stanislaus County Board of Supervisors. Donna Linder, Stanislaus County Clerk Recorder. Our Honorable Mayor, Amy Bublak, City of Turlock. Vice Mayor Gil Esker. Councilman Andrew Nostati. And last but not least, Alice Pollard from Stanislaus County Board of Education. And Deacon Daniel Ayudian from the Holy Cross Armenian Apostolic Church. Our first speaker is John Bedbabanta. John has written an essay that is his rendition of the martyrs of Semele in 1933 from the eyes of a child. It's called Sevded Semele. I'd like to ask him to come up, but before John says anything, I'd like to let you know this young man is the recipient of the state seal by literacy seal from the County Board of Education in the Assyrian language. He is an intern with the Assemblyman Heath Flores' office, and he will be attending UC Merced to pursue his calling in environmental engineering.
I was playing with my cousins on an exceptionally warm morning in early August in the year 1933. I was too young to remember then, but something, a great schism, had happened between my people and the Iraqi government. All I knew was that I was a young boy living in the mountains of Semele, and I was Assyrian. My grandma made a point out of it. She would tell me, Bruni, atun akturoyvet, ulaman shitla. My boy, you are Assyrian, and don't forget it. My mom and her brother were busy attending our guest, our parish priest, while my dad was out hunting with the other men of our village. We had grown hungry and thirsty due to our wells slowly drying out, and the summer heat claiming the lives of the animals we used for sustenance. My cousins noticed a large dust cloud in the distance, distorted by the waves of heat rising from the ground. My first cousin, Ninvid, ran away to her mom, my mother's sister, and told her about the sight that was amusing to her, but alarming to her mother. I stayed silent. I just hoped and prayed that it was my dad and the hunting party coming back. My mother, her brother, and the priests were out of our house now and observing what the cause of this dust cloud could be. Our hunting party was about a few dozen men, but this ominous dust cloud looked far too big to be produced by just a few dozen men. By now, even my elderly grandma hobbled out of her house, wooden cane in hand. She had been bedridden for a few days, affected by the famine which had swept our village. Her voice croaked like a frog due to her dry throat and old age, but you could still hear her quiet prayer as she was cycling through her rosary. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up due to it being apparent that this wasn't our hunting party. Our ancestors were some of the most successful and brutal warriors thousands of years ago, but we had grown into docile pacifists due to our armies being reduced to ashes and bones, and our weapons having been confiscated. Even the last few weapons we had were taken by our hunters in their endeavor to feed our village. To put it simply, we were in no position to defend an attack, and everyone knew that. My priest, in an effort to make peace, requested for the last remaining food to be brought out as a peace offering to our guests. At this point, I turned around and all 3,000 members of our village were standing with bated breath upon the receival of our guests. They rode closer with swords and guns in their hands. They came up to my priest, and my priest, unwavering in faith, raised his hand up in a gesture of peace, but the same hand got chopped off by our attackers. They raised their bayoneted weapons and let out a blood-curdling war cry. In the chaos, only I noticed that there were heads skewered onto the bayonets, and the first head was that of my father's. They didn't even have the decency to close his eyes. They ascended into our village like the angel of death descending into Egypt, looking for doors not marked with the cross of blood. But their actions put the merciless angel of death to shame. They came from all sides and crawled us up like we were pigs, and separated us into men, women, and children. They knocked the cane out of my grandma's hands and finished her off with a swift chop of their sword. I couldn't look. My sweet, harmless grandmother. Oh God, did they not have grandmothers? They waved my dad's head around, reinforcing that if the strongest man in the village, armed with weapons, was dead, then we had no chance. My strong, brave father. Oh God, did they not have fathers? They came for my mom, her sisters, and the rest of the women in the village, and undressed them, and spit on them, and did vile things to them, in front of their husbands and fathers who were helpless and tied like hogs. My innocent mother, oh God, did they not have mothers? After they killed my mother, they went for her brother and the rest of the men in the village, and chopped all of them at the knees to remind us that they were higher than us, and resistance was futile. They buried the men standing, leaving only their heads on the surface, and drove their horses over them repeatedly while they were still alive. My cousin Nimba's crying for her dead mother annoyed one of the assailants, who stabbed her in the stomach and led her to die slowly. They shoved the young children into a church and poured kerosene all over it before setting it to flame while they were still alive. It seemed like an eternity for me, but it couldn't have been more than a few seconds. I turned around and saw some of the women had managed to escape and were running to the hills towards Iran, the same place they had just escaped from not too long ago. I saw my chance and ran between the legs of an assailant to join them. I turned around to take one last look at my beloved Semele, which was now burning in flames, just like my beloved city of Nineveh did thousands of years before. But I couldn't leave it all behind and had to go back to get something to remember it by. I saw my grandma's rosary on the ground and drove for it before I left, narrowly dodging sword and spear. I hightailed with the women to a safer place, but we found out soon enough that many of us wouldn't survive the heat and lack of water. Some of the women chose to bring their babies, but were pressured by others to leave them behind because their crying would give us all up. Many women did leave their kids behind, but one mother chose to keep her child, whose name was Yohanna, and split from the group, sacrificing her life for a chance to give her child life. We went from being kings of the mountains to being slaves of the government. We have constantly been searching for a new place to call home, to truly call home. I have been searching for 100 years looking for my homeland. My grandma's rosary in my hand and her words in my head. Bruni, Aten Alturayevit, Ulam Shitla. Thank you, everyone. I wanted to just say that, honestly, I haven't cried in a long time since my grandfather passed away 6 years ago. And as I was researching and writing this, tears were shedding from my eyes. And as I was translating what happened, it was too hard for me. And it's just embarrassing and vile what they did to us. And I'd just like to thank everyone that came here to remember all the martyrs that died. Thank you for all the priests, congressmen, mayor, everyone that came, council people, and I'd just like to thank Michelle Malko for the translation and Rabbi Yosef Ben Yosef for helping me learn the history of what the disgusting thing that's happened in Samaria and all the other genocides that Assyrian been involved in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I'd like to inform everyone that John wrote this both in English and in Assyrian. A page from Assyrian history. I would like to invite Assyrian to please come up and recite this in Assyrian. And John has translated all that Rabbi Kasha will be saying in English for those who do not speak Assyrian, so you will know exactly what the words are.
Hujushlama urmi in kitabat Al-Putrus Sankhir Dara Isri Diet Ninus Nirani. Budaharaka biktabe le Lutheriona de Gutaka of the Sahid Oima وهتخا شروع لآها فرا جدايا ين فراجلي مندي بالكثرن قداها قاسوكا اختي كل ناشا وصلمن قيانو سبب لتخا قالاما هذا مليار ماصل لقراشن آها شكلا وكل ناشا زي لماصل كاتب لكل قصة راقا سبب كل ناشا قدا تاهر نسيانا بريشت لبداها أنا بدرشمن بكريوتا نسيان الجامع من راقة من أورمي كوشتا من أورمي فيلا تمونسر تاموس الكوتوم تمونسر بدا كوشتا زودا من تلاي ألبي برداشوتا خكمة قرباني خكمة أقلي خكمة ركابي بدا كوشتا لا مريستا إنا مناجستا شواسر تاموس بريوان قليدوا لرمشا دو يوما دوراي شوريلن ساپر كل چاليشي قمكلته من دكتور شيخ و ريشانة ملت إيوا ملت فيلون حاس بصوت تري دليل تمانسر تاموس بني أورمي شوريلون لكواتشا حالا متفاعت لطفاً خبرا سر بني أورمي إيوا لآديبا وملت لكواتشا وبت خمده الإنجلسناي آتي إن جاري ألم لا منتيلا هل ساعت خطسر مقام كاوترا اتفناش بطلاطا من ديتا أنا مخامن دعاني خاري بلطل قربة صوت أسرة فلقي إن المبارصة خطسر خنادر إيوا سبب قرداي شبخن جمديتا وكل غزيلو يو الله نقتلو الله دمتفاته دئريا وبراشا درن كليكوا بني نار دنظلو مقام كبشتا تيرا قربا بدمديتا آني صلاة إيوا متفاته نار دمديتا برندس زي الأرخرة وآني سامي زودا صلاة إيوا ورخات الراب خربرة من برایزی اتفالوزدوت ددیشمن عربان لیبم سایل رایه مال گشران کلیخ و شقیات امکو یمات روپوا یالی مروات کلپت تلقبه لبنه بیت اومدی بوش آززان ایوه لیتایوت میا و هاوا خمان مريم ياشر شويق أرخاته خلالا مياتا توز أرخا اختلجا جردا بدواتا ونقرا نجيب الأقلاته خردي و بچنجل لكز ماتت هدرابات آلما مثل پشر قطيلا فيجن كل أخنيان قرينه وقربة للسين قلب من ملة رابو بيشن دريق ليخسر بدريتت جلاتي بتوبانجي بديشنا آلما ينزي رقويبا من ديه زوزي ويالي اختي كلها بحرق لغانو مليوني دعوت دعاتراي كشنا بوبيتا بورمي وبسين والله أخشفت الناشي من أسرة هل 15,000 ناشي مثلهم آها راتا وبآني بيش بجي أورمي زي الله خا ريشت جرجت أروقي ادملت دريقة من أورمي لآب خينا إيغا جوميانو دملت أخبر خطلا يوماني دوقت ودوكا قطلا يوماني كي ما صدفة أزد من جابا جو ألما جو الخاتي جاشوكت و دويلي پیش خیال سوره برطلا ارپاشنه بخیل بیمارا تانیمون یمی اکیا ایکلا پشتا مسکینا یمولت لآبدی بخینا یا شوکوت ردابختا تفتلا خودخا قایا و حصوله برخشب کما حصولیاته اینا ناشو بختات و یاد سوره شمشوهنا من خمة وصاوة بطلابها مية وهيرفع مودي أودت بدني مسكيني كلنا شرقان صلنا قيان سبب الشكلة هيش ليأتي الجراشة سافر من أرمي هالهمادان جرشلا من 13 هالكلاي يوماني ترويجيبان الأرخا مليفا من جندايد ناشي وسوسواتي وشركة خيراتي خاري خرابة جنجزانا وخيكياهي قطلا ينزودا قيسي زودا من 15 كيلومتر لتفا 100 فقلي بخاناشا اتفناقز بيو بقري خوني مودي بايد تخلق عين أمري بروني قم شابقلي ولانصيلي لابلي جرشلت وبينجوخ وجلدي مخيلي لا هو ينقلن بإيدك كاكوري قربا سين الله كتزدوتها من دجمن رابع خلانتها كل مرقي بيش بشويقي لرخمة دجمني يقولني ربسر ألبي أطراين بلون أصيلي ولامسيلون أرقي بآي دجمن خردية وقيلة اجتماعيات أخشي بيشلون فرق أمريكاي لبلي التومس من دي بيشاور الالتف بيشلي من كتاب خاصة دقينا شغلي قام مغلطة إزجادة برقا بيرخد إيلو يخد سبتمبر 1918 وزيمون كوجي بيشي تمري جو بورا اخشواماش شلدت أرزي وبختاتي وكالاتي وبناتي ويالي سوري طلاق وروات الآن بأيني خزيبن جو مديتا كلها بخلاشة من خمشمة هل شواما شلدي بدبنا الأوداري يعني كل ميتنا من كبنا وزدوتا وقرتا قاشت وغزي من باباروت هل آتت الأبلاكنده شول ديانا كل مليه جلپاته کلات بنات و بختات یال سوری برات بود خیه که تو پنچی ددیجمن امپیل باره بسیار ده اخ کرویشی کمانه مخیام جانه گویاما و دوبیلون ریشه کلات و بنات لا نقلي إلى الدجمن وبيشي في دبيسور خنقلن إن لا بشلون شكلن خين بشلون دويقي جوانقي بشلون قطقطي بناتو كلاتي تبخلي إقاري بختاتي سوياتي بشلون دري جو قني هرخاي كل أسرة ين 15 جو خا قني دومات تكر بشاي خطر بيشا كل جوانق خشتم قطلا ودن تازي قاعدة بناتو سوري دو اسراشن بيشلون دويقي جو عمر قاعدة وبيشلون مطفى والكتاب قديشة وطالما بيشلون في دبيسور تتحكم من دن بنات السوري مثلهم جو إيدة شقلانة إقارة مثل تامن كما تامن هل إيمان تامن ماموردیان دو آقا خسته بر شویشن پیش قطیلا به کپروتا و پلپا جو آلولا و پیش روپیا السولا و لبسا آها و مسکرتا خا کلوبا سموکا پیش پلپا من بیت الجان و خردیه بگدالو غدا ماتا زی پیشلا مترتجو كومو أخت الزونية پیش نبيده البنات وكالات لآتي الحقوية بنخاق وقت دحق خلو ريشان بتيعقل وكانخلو أخ 500 البئاتوراية سامي جورا نقرة من كل شنة بربزي جو تشولي براكة بتخيه نكيكيات سارة وبخيت حالات بطينة شبلبيات يلودة بساقة أختنا جهاوة لا رخمة خكمة انبيلة وبمياتها قاية ببخايبة ورابولة مدور وجوة لطيارتها ودع بختسوتها طورتها پشتا دلتا ببرونا مرخمانة پیاشر مسکتا بجارج مرا خاقالا ماريرا كبرونو بروني مترلي خنا لي مصيان كليان الخاصوف وبلي مصيان بأقلي أتيان متفالي ومرليني مسند لي بخاقايا ومسندالي ومرا كبرونو بروني خلوي داردنون أينوخ إن لا ماختلي بجولا برونا دمت أينو بجرايا شبيلالي توبنجو خاقالا راجودا مريمي چون أينوخ جولا مخيالي جو صدر جو دليمون إمانك پیش مقدرش الخایه جوالانه ومديتا پیش يولت اللي غدا سقط فرصة قد مشلني ويم پیش كريم ومبارد دا سقط كل آني خامات پیش دون طيب حسين خامش شفاكم
We will never forget. We promise never to forget. Thank you, John Babanta, for that translation that we were all able to read in English. I would like to ask Alice Pollard to please come up here and say a few words, as she is a granddaughter, like most of us are, of genocide survivors.
Good evening, Shlamala. Armoy Shomindi Lemsenham Zimmon, so I'm going to speak in English if you don't mind. My father was Paul Ishu and my mother was Jenny Ishu. My father was a survivor and a refugee. My grandfather was a priest. He had been an Orthodox priest in a little village called Elkai in Ermi. And they had a shortage of Roman Catholic priests, so they recruited him to be a priest after he was married and had children. So I guess I'm a legitimate granddaughter of a priest. But what happened was in 1915, my father was 10, my uncle was 8, he had other siblings, and the Turks came in to massacre everyone. My grandfather took everyone into the church courtyard to try to protect them. They came and killed all the men and boys. You heard the descriptions. In fact, Luther Warda, whose name was up there, was a friend of my father's. So they were refugees, though, from 1915 until they were able to get to Marseille, France in 1921, and then came to the United States in 1926. My father came to Turlock in 1936, bought a farm where Brown School is today. But I want to talk a little bit more about something positive, because as Gasha Edwards said, they didn't treat themselves as victims. They looked to be positive. So when they came to the United States, they tried to be as successful as possible. They valued education. And when they came to Turlock, the group of survivors actually helped start the Assyrian American Civic Club. So my father was a charter member as well as my mother. So there is something to be proud of the history. It's tragic, it's terrible, but Assyrians are a proud people, they're successful, and they instill that in their children. So I wanted to share that with everyone, but this is something very dear to me because it's very personal. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. We all remember Alice's late mom. She was one of the dear, long-lasting members of the Assyrian American Civic Club. So now, it's time for our keynote address. Dr. Stephen Leonard Jacobs returned to the Department of Religious Studies as Associate Professor and Aaron Aronoff Chair of Justice Studies on January 1, 2001, and received tenure as of August 2004. He was promoted to full professor as of August 2017. He received his BA from Penn State University and his BHI, MAHI, DHI, DD, and Rabbinic ordination from the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. A resident of Alabama for 4 decades, he has taught at Spring Hill College, Mobile, University of Alabama at Birmingham, Birmingham Southern College, Sanford University, Brigham, the University of Alabama in Huntsville, and Calhoun Community College, Huntsville, as well as serving congregations in Birmingham, Mobile, and Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, and Dallas, Texas. Dr. Jacobs' primary research foci are in biblical studies, translation and interpretation, including the Dead Sea Scrolls, Jewish-Christian relations, and Holocaust and genocide studies. It's an absolute honor to welcome Dr. Stephen Jacobs.
My friends, because I fully believe that those of us who stand in solidarity to commemorate any genocide are in truth friends in mourning, friends in pain, and friends in the legacy of suffering and responsibility. Before I formally address my topic, lighting candles and cursing darkness, Raphael Lemkin, the Assyrian genocide in the present moment, I want to initially share with you the following. First, I want very much to thank Dean Jim Tudio of Cal State University, Stanislaus, for his gracious invitation to share my thoughts with you, in addition to his most helpful emails. And Tabitha Zepeda and Carmen Morad, for all their important work towards making this visit possible. It is an honor to be the recipient of persons with such talents and skills. And while I had heard of Cal State Stanislaus, I was totally unfamiliar with Turlock until I stumbled across a reference during my research in William Soroyan's short story, 70,000 Assyrians, in his 1934 classic, The Daring Young Man on the Flying Trapeze, to wit, where the character Badal says to the author, quote, "We lived in New York until 5 years ago, then we came out west to Turlock, then we moved to San Francisco." Second, I want very much to dedicate this presentation to 2 very important people who I trust are already known to you. Professor of Law Hannibal Travis of Florida International University, my very good friend and colleague who has done so much important work to bring the tragedy of the Assyrian genocide to the attention of those of us who continue to labor in the dark vineyards of both the Holocaust and genocide. And Sabri Atman of the Sefo Assyrian Genocide Research Center, who continues to tell this story, and who I had the great pleasure of meeting 2 years ago at a conference at the University of Calgary in Canada entitled Understanding Atrocities, Remembering, Representing, and Teaching Genocide, and whose presentation was itself a powerful affirmation of the tragedy and the important work that has yet to be done. Thirdly, to the reasonable challenge of full disclosure, I feel the obligation at the outset to tell you the following. Prior to my doctoral work in Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, and non-canonical literatures with an emphasis on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and a minor in biblical history, I had amassed 27 graduate hours in Hebrew Bible, Old Testament alone, though ultimately my MA was in Hebrew poetry. The sum total of my knowledge of Assyrians and Assyria was confined to the following in numerous references throughout the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament. In the year 721 BCE, the Assyrians invaded and vanquished the 10 northern tribes of ancient Israel, carrying them off into slavery and ultimately assimilating them out of existence, but giving rise to the ongoing and tantalizing myth of the so-called 10 lost tribes, who have at times been said to have become Native Americans. No. Eskimos. No. Or other such disparate peoples. Equally, I have used that knowledge of ancient civilizations and empires to become the co-author of a textbook, The Scriptures of Ancient Judaism, forthcoming from Cognella Press in San Diego next year. Thus, I thank you most profoundly for the opportunity to deepen and increase my awareness of the Assyrian genocide in preparation for this lecture, though I have already addressed it minimally vis-a-vis the work of Raphael Lemkin, whose picture was there, as will become apparent shortly. Parenthetically, I would also note that during those same graduate years, I took as required a one-semester graduate course in Aramaic, and did reasonably well, I think. Though no longer part of the Hebrew language discourse, Aramaic still remains in our Jewish prayers in two important contexts. Our Kaddish prayer of memorial, said at both funerals of our loved ones and at worship on the anniversary of the passing of those same loved ones, and in our Passover celebration, commemorating our exodus from Egypt, our desert trek to freedom, and our return home to our promised land of Israel, in a prayer that begins, Halachma Anya, this is the bread of affliction. Lastly, you should know that I am a religiously committed and religiously observant Jewish person, the child of a survivor escapee of the Holocaust, in Hebrew the Shoah, who lost more than 150 members of his rather large German Jewish family, including his parents, my grandparents, murdered in the death camp Treblinka in July 1942. all of his aunts and uncles except 4, and all of his cousins except 3. Thus, in accord with our Jewish religious tradition, I annually light memorial candles in memory of my own family individually and our Jewish people collectively on Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Commemoration Day. Better to light one candle than curse the darkness, as the epigrammatic cliché would have it. Now to the topic at hand, as we begin our conversation, for I truly hope it will be a conversation, and we will have an opportunity to enter into dialogue at its conclusion. Let us therefore begin by introducing ourselves to Raphael Lemkin, author of our word genocide, and the motivating force behind the 1948 United Nations Convention on the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide. Though our own country, these United States, much to our shame and embarrassment, did not affirm the Genocide Convention as it has come to be called until 1988, nearly 4 decades after Lemkin's death and during the presidency and advocacy of Ronald Reagan. Lemkin was born June 24, 1900, on the family farm owned by his father and uncle, along with his 2 brothers, in Bezvodina, Poland, though part of the greater Russian Empire, to a mother committed to learning. He would go on to become fluent in 9 languages and read 14 others. During his teenage years, he came across the 1895 book Quo Vadis by the Polish Nobel laureate Henryk Sienkiewicz, detailing rather graphically Roman Emperor Nero's brutal and horrific extermination of the Christians in his realm. Evidently greatly troubled and disturbed by his reading, he would go on to examine increasingly greater depth other examples of genocidal atrocities: Armenians by Turks, Catholics by the Japanese, Huguenots by the French, and his own Jewish people throughout history. Concluding that the best way to address these ongoing horrors was to become a lawyer, later focusing on international law. He would receive his degree from Lvov University, already challenging his professors why no such law existed for such crimes against people groups, and would embark on a career in Warsaw as a public prosecutor and governmental official. By 1934, he was ready to present his thinking in what initially he would call the twin crimes of barbarism, the destruction of people groups, and vandalism, the destruction of their cultures, at an international conference in Madrid, Spain, but was prevented from doing so because of the anti-Semitic climate in Poland at the time, and Poland's fruitless desire to maintain good diplomatic relations with Hitler's Germany. 5 years later, September 1st, 1939, as we now know all too well, the Nazis would invade Poland. Lemkin would initially serve both in the resistance and Polish army, and after a harrowing journey, including a farewell visit to his parents and family, 49 members of his own family would be murdered in the Holocaust. He would arrive in the United States in 1941 and begin teaching law at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina, where a good friend and colleague had arranged an appointment. 2 years later, he would join the U.S. Board of Economic Warfare and Foreign Economic Administration under the direction of then Vice President Henry Wallace, giving the opportunity to present his thinking on the crime of crimes to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in a brief memo He found both audiences positive, but the reality and demands of World War II overshadowed all other concerns. Lemkin would then go on to serve as an advisor to Justice Robert H. Jackson, Chief U.S. Prosecutor at the U.S. and International Military Tribunal in Nuremberg, Germany's war crimes trial, 1945-1946, and was able to place the word genocide into the proceedings 17 times, though not officially, for the accomplishment for the fourfold indictment of the crimes: participation in a common plan or conspiracy for the accomplishment of a crime against peace, planning and initiating and waging wars of aggression and other crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. In 1944, he would publish his first masterwork, Axis Rule in Occupied Europe, Laws of Occupation, Analysis of Government, Proposals for Redress. Chapter 9 of that massive 644-page text was titled Genocide, though the chapter itself was relatively short, pages 79 to 95, 16 pages. But it would go on to become an important part of his legacy and his gift to us and all humankind. The chapter itself is divided into 3 parts: genocide, a new term and new conception for destruction of nations; techniques of genocide in various fields: political, social, cultural, economic, biological, physical, and moral; recommendations for the future; prohibition of genocide in war and peace; and international control of occupation practices. The chapter begins as follows: new conceptions require new terms. By genocide, we mean the destruction of a national or an ethnic group. This new word, coined by the author to describe an old practice in its modern development, is made from the ancient Greek word genos, race or tribe, and the Latin side, killing, thus corresponding in its formation to such words as tyrannicide, homicide, infanticide, etc. It is intended rather to signify a coordinated plan of different actions aimed at the destruction of essential foundations of the life of national groups, with the aim of annihilating the groups themselves. What is often overlooked, however, is Lemkin's first footnote. Quote, another term could be used for the same idea, namely ethnocide, consisting of the Greek word ethnos, nation, and the Latin word side. Either way, either word, genocide or ethnocide, Lemkin is addressing group murder on a horrific scale. After the Nuremberg trials, Lemkin would return to the United States, visiting Europe often to obsessively encourage the newly formed United Nations, the successor to the League of Nations in the aftermath of the Second World War, to pass the Genocide Convention, actively and aggressively participating in the drafting and rewriting of the document itself, to the point of personal exhaustion and damage to his health. At one point, Lemkin writes in his now published autobiography, totally unofficial, he was hospitalized. And as he told all those who would listen, he was suffering from genociditis, working on the Genocide Convention. But he would persevere. And in December of 1948, UN member states would ratify the convention in preparation for individual nation states affirming it in their own countries, a majority of whom were needed to make it international law. Though every U.S. president from Harry Truman on, Dwight Eisenhower, John Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and Jimmy Carter would affirm their support, it would fall to Ronald Reagan, as I have mentioned, to affix his signature over the opposition of its three staunchest adversaries: Strom Thurmond of South Carolina, John Stennis of Mississippi, and Jesse Helms of North Carolina. At this juncture, it is important to note that one of the legacies of the Genocide Convention in force today is the International Criminal Court, established in 2002 after the Rome Statutes of 1998. Sadly and tragically, then, President Bill Clinton signed on. President George W. Bush signed off. Two other legacies, outgrowths of both the Genocide Convention and the Nuremberg War Crimes trials, are the International Criminal Law for the former Yugoslavia, the ICTY, established in 1993, and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, the ICTR, established in 1994. Lemkin would spend the remaining years of his life working aggressively toward the passage of this Genocide Convention by his beloved and adopted country, but to no avail. He would die tragically, too young, at age 59, of a massive heart attack in his publicist's office in New York City on August 28, 1959. He is buried in Mount Hebron Cemetery in Flushing, Queens, New York. His tombstone reads, quote, "Father of the Genocide Convention." Only 7 people attended his funeral. Lemkin's other master work was to be his 3-volume History of Genocide, Antiquity, Middle Ages, Modern Times. Sadly, it was never completed, rejected by publishers supposedly due to a lack of interest, though its full outline of its 63 chapters is found within his more than 20,000 pages of articles, documents, newspaper clippings, interviews, unpublished manuscripts, etc. To date, the 13 chapters which were written, 21%, have now been published in my own edited volume, Lemkin on Genocide. In May of 2013, a conference was held at the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center in Skokie, Illinois, entitled International Conference on the Ottoman Turkish Genocides of Anatolian Christians, organized by the Asia Minor and Pontic Hellenic Research Center, the Armenian National Committee, and the Assyrian Center for Genocide Studies. A full complement of those papers is found in the volume and is edited by George N. Shrinian of the Armenian Zoryan Institute of Toronto, entitled Genocide in the Ottoman Empire, Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks, 1913 to 1923, and which I believe is available for purchase outside. Among those papers addressing the Assyrian genocide are the following: Anahit Khosroeva's Assyrians in the Ottoman Empire and the official Turkish policy of their extermination, 1890s to 1918, Paul R. Bartrop's Considering Genocide Testimony, 3 case studies from the Armenian, Pontic, and Assyrian genocides, Stavros T. Stavridis, The Assyrian Issue, 1914 to 35, Australian Documents and Press, and my own Lemkin on 3 genocides, comparing his writing on the Armenian, Assyrian, and Greek genocides, to which I will return momentarily. My friends, it is not for me, on this occasion of memory and remembrance, to again retell a story with which I must presume most, if not all of you, are far too familiar. Of horrific genocidal murders, rapes, and other violations of women, girls, children, and men, not to mention the wanton destruction of property and sacred sites and objects in Diyarbakir Vilayet, Harput, Mardin, Viran Shahir, Feish Khabur, Mosul, the Hakkari Mountains, Tel Armen, Van, Sir Tur Abdin, Urmia, Kolbashan, Salmas, and too many other locales. 750,000 murdered, 75% of that region's Assyrians. It is an endless and repetitive accounting of the very worst behaviors on the part of those within the Ottoman Empire, involving both Turks and Kurds, organized and unorganized, frenzied and methodically planned, and all sanctioned by those in leadership up to and including Sultan Abdul Hamid II, the Committee for Union and Progress with its three pashas, Mehmed Tala'at, Ismail Enver, and Ahmed Jamal, all of whom met violent deaths, and its successor, the so-called Young Turks, under Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Ongoing Turkish denial in the face of overwhelming historical evidence, including eyewitness accounts by survivors, by bystanders, by non-participants, and by perpetrators themselves, remains an affront to the conscience of all humankind. This topic of ongoing Holocaust and genocide denialism, however, remains a topic for another time. As far as Lemkin was concerned, however, in his uncompleted history of genocide, more chapters were to be devoted to the Greeks than either Armenians or Assyrians. Genocide in ancient Greece, genocide against the Greeks, Chios, Greeks under the Franks, genocide in exile, Greeks in exile from Turkish occupation, genocide by the Greeks against the Turks, Hungary against the Turks, genocide by the Janissaries, and Smyrna. Interestingly enough, only one chapter in Volume 3, Chapter 39, was entitled Armenians, though among his papers was an untitled 120-page manuscript and a 6-page summary, the former having now been published in full by the Center for Armenian Remembrance in Glendale. Lemkin's 2 chapters on the Assyrians, however, have been published in Lemkin on Genocide, from Volume 1, Chapter 2, Assyrians, and Volume 3, Chapter 2, Assyrians in Iraq, Christians. Whether or not Lemkin would have addressed the plight of the Assyrians at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century outside of Iraq is open to question. His chapters on the tragedies of the Greeks at the hands of the Turks were never written. So we cannot answer that question about the Assyrians as well with any definite knowledge. In his standalone manuscript on the plight of the Armenians, he does not address these 2 parallel genocides. Summarily, as I have presented and written about these 2 chapters previously, the first borders on the condemnatory. Lemkin's reading of the Assyrian Empire is decidedly that they were culpable for genocide. In the second, his reading of the fate of the Assyrians in modern Iraq is that they are a decidedly genocidally victimized people. In his specific case, painting this picture requires acknowledging the historically guilty before addressing the historically innocent. The first chapter is a historical excursus. The second chapter is a contemporary one, though it does open with a, quote, chronological historical background to the Macedonian problem, taken from the Encyclopedia Britannica of 1911. Lemkin begins his first account by situating the Assyrian Empire geographically between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, and then goes on to address the Assyrian people, its economy, its tremendously large slave population, and its religion, quote, a compromise between the monotheism of the Hebrews and the polytheism of the time, end quote, before moving quickly into the central focus of the chapter, genocide. He continues his reportage, documenting numerous cases of genocide, and then observes, quote, what the Assyrians could have accomplished with their artistic talents, their scientific curiosity, their organizational ability, had they not directed themselves mainly to destruction, staggers the imagination. Such an observation is consistent with his twofold insistence that genocide is both the physical destruction of a people and the destruction of a people's culture. The chapter itself is equally indicative of his critique at work and unsparing in his condemnation of those who practiced then and continue now to practice genocide. The central focus of the chapter for Lemkin, however, was the genocidal conflict between the Assyrian Empire and the Elamites. Thus, for Lemkin, Assyria was to take its place historically as one nation among many others in the ancient world for whom the practice of genocide was very much a raison d'etre of its own existence. Though unquestionably compassionate to the plight of 20th century Assyrians in Iraq, he notes that in the 1920s, quote, the Assyrians were tactless with the Iraqis, addressing their complaints over the heads of local officials, directing to the British High Commissioner, so that the Iraqis became increasingly unsympathetic towards the Assyrians. Regarding the various murders of Assyrians in their homes in Iraq throughout the same time period, he is equally unsparing of the British, for whom military and economic consideration trumped moral ones. What is most unusual about this particular chapter and the Iraqi-related genocide of the Assyrians is that Lemkin seemingly goes back into history, almost as if the two chapters are combined into one. It is also important when reading Lemkin's historical accounts of the genocides he included and intended to include in his 3-volume text, to note that he documents victims, perpetrators, victims becoming perpetrators, and perpetrators becoming victims, all by reference to appropriate sources. What Lemkin voices indirectly by including this history in this chapter on Assyrians is his understanding that those Christians were in fact Assyrian Christians. What is apparent is Lemkin's evident concern not only for the loss of life, but also for cultural destruction. What therefore comes through most clearly in this particular chapter for us today is and should be a reluctance to cast any one group as fully and totally either victims or perpetrators. The lesson to be learned, to the degree that genocide perversely becomes a teaching modality, is that the event of genocide sucks into its maw all manner of groups and individuals and unalterably changes them for better and worse. And which now brings us to the present moment as we begin to conclude these comments. My friends, my reading of Lemkin's work and his universalized commitment to telling the stories of the genocides of all humanity throughout history and working through international law to alleviate this scourge of what we have done and continue to do to ourselves leads me to conclude this presentation by sharing with you what I fully and truly believe are the lessons to be learned. Number one, if one is to seriously take the tragedy of one's own people and its horrific lessons, in this case the Assyrian genocide, as we gather to remember those incalculable losses and honor the memories of precious family and friends so that they will never be forgotten, then morally and ethically, we cannot ignore the pain and plight of others, Jews, Cambodians, Bosnians, Rwandese, Palestinians, Sudanese, Native Americans, African Americans, and yes, those children and adults who find themselves in detention centers in horrific conditions in these United States. Number two, we who are privileged to call ourselves scholars must always remain committed to exploring objectively, aware of our own at times prejudices and biases, the data we examine, drawing conclusions based on the evidence presented and not on economic, political, social, or sociological agendas. Number three, implied in this study of the various genocides throughout history must be the courage necessary to condemn this crime of crimes and those primarily and secondarily responsible, as Lemkin does throughout his work. Number four, perhaps unique to the study of genocide as scholarly endeavors, it is not only the past that drives us forward, it is the future and the possible prevention of additional yet unacknowledged or future genocides that compel us and demand our involvement. As Lemkin himself would have it, quote, "I understand the function of memory is not only to register past events, but to stimulate human conscience," end quote. Number five, stimulating human conscience then, in the various cases of genocide, both historically and contemporarily, must lead us to preventative actions, both presently and in the future. The alternative is to cynically conclude that history teaches us nothing, that we cannot learn anything of value in the present, and that we stumble blindly into the future. Lemkin's contribution should remind us that one human being can indeed effect significant and global change, and that collectively we can make a difference. And finally, number six, let us always remember and honor the victims of genocide. Not only the Assyrian genocide, but every other genocide as well. By telling their stories, reading and rereading their stories, and when if possible, standing in solidarity with them in their very presence. For it is the victims of those genocides who rightly demand of us the very best of which we are capable as members of the human community. Addressing himself to the tragic plight of the forced residential schooling of First Nations Indigenous peoples' children in Canada in the last century, and the issue of cultural genocide, Payam Akavan, associate professor at McGill University's Faculty of Law in Montreal, wrote, quote, "Yet in the killing fields of Bosnia, Rwanda, Darfur, and today in Iraq and Syria, we witness what are often sterile polemical debates on the genocide label, a pretense of empathy, creating the illusion of progress, while we remain bystanders to radical evil. We reduce the enormity of human suffering to the rationalist credo of law and self-delusional rituals that substitute lofty incantations for meaningful action. But even in doing so, we adopt a double standard, condemning the abominations of the past of others while avoiding those of our own past. There is a danger that in focusing inordinately on the cultural genocide debate, we may become lost in abstractions in a rationalistic culture that cannot fathom the depths of human suffering, that confuses politically correct platitudes and superficial sentimentality with genuine empathy and meaningful engagement. The cry of a 6-year-old torn away from the arms of her mother speaks more forcefully than any legal label about the gravity of this historical injustice and the work of healing that remains ahead. Exposing the truth of the past is about exploring the future of reconciliation. It is a lesson on this night of committing ourselves to honoring the memories of the victims of the Assyrian and other genocides that we dare not forget at our own peril. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobs. At this time, in conclusion, I'd like to ask Mr. Sam David to come up here. We have some presentations, and we'd like to hear from our elected officials who have honored us with their presence here tonight, and we'd like to honor those who have worked to make this event possible.
هبتون بسینه أنا قايل قاتيخ خاتبران خاشتاكوتا خهدام الدابنية تاكل بقرتا يقارل قد إتلا تخبر سوبر قد بشن أخنا نجور بفقانا همز المخبوط يعني طول قبيل وتيلق ببترات الجانا هم زمر بعصة دني ملياني كلهم بيبير فداير إنهم جارك هبيلان خراباتي جارك هبيلان دوستي جارك هبيلان يقتالي قد أقل ديان بالد راو بغداين قد أخنا أديوما دوخ من أطرد ريخ الأمريكان وحرسوبة قد تينا لخ أهمزومنا قاتان بمخدة نكتات لاشن تريشايد أشيتها دكتور جيكوبس تتيالي أنا من ديانا أنا قاينة بداتيت كريم هم من ديانا قرب 15 سنة همزمتي كويابا بالناشد يطان قربكتان وإن آتو خيمة قيمة قالت شريا لخا سبيلات منية بناشيت الرابلة مليان الرابلة تريتا بناشيت الدقمية ومن كل جبان الدنيا إتلانخا كان أطراف إلى من أطراف إيران، العراق، سوريا، الأردن. خمني لقد نخا كم سرعان بارخي وبساس بيوخم بخاص بيوخم بهرت بيوخم وبرسوك بمقر جورج هاربر congressman ديان وبمقر هيث فلورا assemblyman ديان. Today resolutions بدا خاشي تدورا the state of California مورنا قد خلي يوم شباب طبق ديان خدنا يوم شيت الأطراي أنا من قاس قاتل أني ما نديد يأخذ جاي مريض بتشييد ديستي إقنوني البخير وأخنا بلخنا لدعنا برايوتا خلية بلخنا لدعنا خشتا واشنطن انتريشن إلى مصر إلى خارج in applaud to Nichani Habazai. Pertegalizar Hegad. You see that? So, Haderam, Rabino Casey, Board of Supervisors, Hader Yahiram, resolutions in the Telekatem who county. Mayor Amy Bublak, Umdita Turlock, Minarabu Hiram Gatem. Ana Khate Brana, بطلاب من كل خامنوك وتخريط الآخر إن أخنا نابنا دوست قربات قد إن هيران قدام تدين براقال ديان ليبارد هل بالباشدني يدا وتبلخا يمدي شوتا كوتتير يدو أمرتير ودي يوم أخنا جات قامتها متخريقا زودا من الماشي من البسبارة قد خامت هاني والله علينا شخنا قتيلات متيبة لأقدام تركيا لأقدام العراق لأقدام الكردات لأن قد ينقطين ودي يوم يقاسوا تشغيلات بدار قد العراق ودي يوم بخليتوني تركيا ودي يوم متوانا مقدالة ودي قبليتوني سو نيخا جوجة خامان إن بيناتيتهم قد آخر يوم الرابع نقايل تشيت دين وخرطة بوش همزمي باس بوش بيرتفت أهميك شوري داخلي رابط التدمنت يأتي من كل أخوكتيتهم قارمتيتهم ومن دانين برسو قد تشيديخ dignitaries ديان so أدير طلبا من كل من if you have any kind of proclamations please come up. We'll start with Assemblyman Heath Flores' office. You're Cooper Common with
It's a privilege to be here with the Assyrian community once again, and I have a tradition at Assyrian events. I try to learn one new word, and today I try to learn Shalom. I get it? I passed that. It was easy. But on August 7th, it's an emotional day for all of us. And today I feel a sense of unity, not only in the Assyrian community, but in our whole community. We have a diverse crowd here. It's different than I'm used to at August 7th events. And it's something to be proud of. We're a diverse community. We're a diverse nation. And we ought to be proud of it. We ought to be unapologetic about it. Let's all celebrate our diversity, our heritage, our culture as we move forward. And remember, your culture, whether it involves genocide or not. Educate folks that are different than you, because that's how we're going to get through this. You know, humanity, we talk about humanity. It was just over 100 years ago that this Assyrian genocide started. Just over 100 years ago. We can't allow it to continue, something like this. Every one of us in this room ought to do something. We can all make a difference. We heard the doctor say that in point 5. Everyone can make a difference, and I encourage each and every one of you to do that. So with that being said, Sam, the Assemblyman wanted me to present this certificate of recognition for August 7th, 2019, the Assyrian Genocide Remembrance Day. So with that being said, I present you this certificate on behalf of Assemblyman Heath Flores.
Thank you, Cooper. Mr. Vito Casey.
Thank you, Sam. We go to a lot of events, all of us up here, and most of the time it's a celebration. They're not remembrances. So you it's a different type of event. I want to tell you, I come here as much to learn, and I've been, this is the third annual, and I have many friends I see out in the audience, and some of you who I don't know, but I come to learn about the culture. So, a powerful speech by Dr. Jacob. John really touched me as he got emotional during what is a lived experience through his family, and I saw some people silently weeping out in the audience, and it shows you what a powerful, more than 100 years after the genocide, about 100 years after the genocide, it shows you how fresh the wound is. And again, it's a great reminder for us as we continue generation after generation allowing things like this to happen, which is unconscionable. I will tell you though, more than 6,700 years, one of the oldest cultures, I would say probably the oldest culture. You've seen a lot of things through the generations, a lot of issues. And as Alice was talking about, I still have never met people with more perseverance and resilience than the Assyrian community. This is just amazing to me. The positive attitude, we talk about work ethic and the culture you're teaching your kids. My dad's an immigrant. He didn't want to teach me the native language. He didn't think much about it. And it's important to keep that. So when I leave you on my last thought, this is the community here. This is the community I love. This is the community I'm choosing to raise my children in. It's the community I want to be a part of. And I thank you for allowing me to be a part of this community, not just the Assyrian community, but this community in general. This is what makes it great. And I will leave you on one last thought. I'm not going to let the congressman get over on me. I want you to know that I am the chairman of the Stanislaus County Board of Supervisors Assyrian Caucus. So, thank you very much.
Mayor, Miss Amy Butler.
Good evening. I wanted to thank President John and the staff of Stanislaus for hosting this. This is a great place to come home to. Because Turlock is so important to all of my colleagues, and Councilmember Washington still in the audience there, but Councilmember Ariana could not make it. So I'll be inviting all of you, and you as well, for Tuesday for a proclamation at 6 o'clock at City Hall, where we can embrace the culture from our home there. As families, very important to Assyrian. Councilmember Ariana's 3 boys couldn't get here, and so we all agree how important this is. So we wanted you to come, if you can, at 6 o'clock to share with our proclamation and have a special moment with that. Thank you so much.
Wayne Sullivan, I would like to ask our Vice Mayor and Council Member, please join us. And also our Chief, would you please join us, Chief? Both Andrew and Gil have been working greatly with our community. I appreciate Andrew as a young Assyrian on the council. He's very active, and we really appreciate him. And also, Gil, as the vice mayor, has been working closely with us. So I want to thank these 2 gentlemen for their support. And mostly, I want to thank our chief. We live in times that it's a little difficult with everything that goes on, with some of the hate events that happen. So I'd like to thank Chief Amerfar on behalf of the Assyrian community that thank you for keeping us safe here in this great city of Turlock. So please a round of applause for that. اختیارت منته اخنن حکم پلاکس بیده خازر تنی جوانت خامات قدیم راب و هیران قدیم لانجر قدیم اخ بدق منیه اینه بدر بدق منیه أنا بنشارنا بCongressman Josh Carter عجباً مجد قديان شو لميدل بي خلت شو لشيالي سو بيجازوخن أطلاق قارنا نبطل من نوعات قابلنا. Congressman, this is just a small token of our appreciation. We hope to see it hanging in your office, of course. It's presented to Congressman Josh Harder, 10th Congressional District, California, in appreciation for your continued support and commemorating the important dates for the Assyrian community in Congress. Your dedication to the need of the 10th District and the Assyrian community is priceless. Assyrian American Civic Club President Sam David, April 7th, 2019.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for what a wonderful event tonight. This absolutely will be hanging in my office, and the reason why you can be so sure is because I have a wonderful district representative, Ishtar Sayedi, right here. Give her a round of applause. Words are great, but action is better. And our office has been very clear. We want to make sure we put an Assyrian on our team, leading our entire casework, especially our entire immigration process of support for this community. And you'll make sure if I ever make any wrong footing for our Assyrian community, she'll keep me on the straight and narrow. So thank you. I appreciate it.
متخلي Assemblyman Heath Laura Batubila Bushiraha Amman in District Director the Yakra Cooper Condit Linamile Kaplak Vilaka Kadavula Mr. Cooper Condit, please step up. This plaque is for Assembly Member Heath Flora, 12th District, California, in appreciation for his continued support in commemorating the important dates for the Assyrian community at the State Assembly Office. Your dedication to the needs of your district and the Assyrian community is priceless. Thank you. Thank you.
Real quick, I forgot to mention and thank Carmen Morad. Let's give her a round of applause. This will be in our office too.
Thank you, Cooper. Sreda Nishitlan, Ida Muniakat, Nijit, Amrisha Mugmuna, Amina Roba Sandane, Ka Shulonik, Khan Danta. Iqamita, Bachin Surtela, Taza Shuritela, in Abkhano and the resolution that Shimyalan Min Yakra Josh Harder Raman Betela. So I have told them in Yukurta Ishar. This is presented to Ishtar Sayadi in appreciation for your continued support and commemorating the important dates recognized by the Assyrian community. Your dedication to the Assyrian cause is invaluable. Presented by Assyrian American Civic Club of Turlock. Last but not least, Anisha Khanta, Vitalraba Hirantaqati Porsupai, Udani, Kamshashi the Pelvi, Garbuna, Listashin, Gaviente Brana. طلب لي منه بديدو أنا قامت بدني إيمان قامعي قد هو public relations chair شو تابو تسبق زين ورابع أنا قيتها قد أخنا آية بل تشغلتها هابيلا من دني ناش شلطان so قلت Carmen Mora تابت لسنزا presented to Carmen Mora in appreciation for your continued support and commemoration the important dates recognized by the Assyrian community. Your dedication to the Assyrian cause is invaluable. يمتخدني خمشاشن هلقي خديا بيشفو جزء كلان خديا خبران الشمير إن مجد نيشا أصلاي لقدامته نيشا أصلاي لهيرت دامته سو خاتشاب خيرا تقني
Thank you, President Sam David, for the opportunity to serve within my capacity with the Assyrian American Civic Club. It is also a pleasure to try to work with some amazing young people, as you saw with John, and our incredible elected officials. And yes, I am a fan of Ishtar as well. I would like to include our ushers for this program. As you know, it's so important. The preservation and advancement of the Assyrian community is my passion. I would like to mention Charlene Envia, Bretil Verda, Edward Yako, and Antilla Sargis. They were your ushers tonight, and they are from the Pittman High School Assyrian Club. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for being here. This concludes our evening of the Assyrian Martyrs. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for contributing to an evening of memory. Good evening.